The Kremlin is denying the conclusions of a report from 5 European countries that found Russia poisoned opposition leader Alexei Navalny with a lethal toxin normally found in a type of frog. Navalny was Russian President Vladimir Putin's fiercest political critic, and he died 2 years ago in a Russian penal colony while serving a 19-year sentence on charges of extremism. The Kremlin claims Navalny died of natural causes, but now the UK, France, Germany, Sweden, and the Netherlands say they are confident Navalny was poisoned by a toxin found in South American poison dart frogs after reviewing an analysis of the samples. We turn to national security and defense analyst Mick Mulroy for us. Mick, I want to start with what Secretary of State Marco Rubio said. He addressed this when he spoke to reporters earlier. I want to play it for you, get your reaction on the back end. Here's the secretary.
Look, those countries came to that conclusion. They coordinated that. We chose, doesn't mean we disagree with the outcome. It wasn't, our endeavor. We obviously are aware of the report. It's a troubling report. We're aware of that case of Mr. Navalny, and certainly it's, we don't have any reason to question it, or we're not disputing or getting into a fight with these countries over it. But it was their report, and they put that out there.
So he calls it troubling, Mick, but he also makes it clear the U.S. was not part of this study, this report. What do you make of the secretary's response?
Jay, it looks to me that he's trying to preserve some of the ability of the U.S. to be this broker in the Ukraine-Russian conflict, but he isn't disputing the findings, which indicates to me that they likely shared the findings with the United States, and there's no opposition to it. And it's important to point out Russia has a history of poisoning political opposition figures, and they do so in a way that, quite frankly, is easy to find. I mean, there's no way a South African or South American frog, would end up in a Russian prison. So this is clearly something that Russia wasn't that concerned about them finding. They're going to deny it. And I think the United States knows it's likely accurate.
You mentioned the administration's goal to be a broker in peace talks as it relates to Ukraine. We know that a Ukrainian delegation has now left for Geneva to conduct another round of negotiations with Russia. Do you have any more hope for this round of peace talks than you did other talks in the past? Are we any closer from the tea leaves that you've seen?
Unfortunately not. Until Russia sees the consequences of this continuous delay and having a ceasefire before they start in earnest, extensive negotiations on ending the conflict, they're likely just going to show up to do this delay. They might, change prisoners, but that's something that's been going on before these, ceasefire negotiations even started. So until they see things like secondary sanctions and potentially releasing the frozen funds of Russia in Europe to Ukraine, they don't see the consequences of continuing the conflict. They have essentially fought to a standstill. The Ukrainians have, the Russians, but the Russians don't want to give up until they believe they've gotten everything they can. And right now, again, there's no real consequences for them to continuing this conflict. They'll show up for negotiations, but they likely won't go anywhere until if Europe and the United States really puts the screws on Russia for continuing this unlawful and unprovoked conflict.
And Mick, before I let you go, I do want to get your assessment of Marco Rubio's speech at the Munich Security Conference. It was a better received speech than J.D. Vance's speech not long ago in the same kind of venue. Rubio got a standing ovation. He tried to kind of link the European and American common cause to this idea of preserving Western civilization. What did you make of everything he said there?
So, Jay, I do think it was an effort to kind of reduce the tension that's been going on between the United States and Europe, not only from this idea that we could annex Greenland, but also the national security strategy significantly deflated the role that Europe plays in U.S. national defense. And that is clear to Europe, and they're very concerned about the alliances such as NATO enduring. And they've seen a lot of very pointed comments by Vice President Vance, for example. And I think that's what Secretary Rubio, who by most analysts' view is very much more of a traditional republic when it comes to foreign policy, try to mitigate. I don't know if it'll be fully successful. The standing ovation was trying, I think, really highlight that that's what they'd like to hear. But still, the national security strategy remains, and that is what the plan, the policy is for the United States.
Yeah, is it enough to quell some of those uneasy European nerves? Mick Mulroy for us. Mick, thank you.